This is a first-person view of what building wealth looks like. I currently have amassed a total asset value of $33,000. These are what some of my cash generative assets look like. I have some ownership in companies like Apple and Microsoft, as well as dividend ETFs like SCHD, which are a collection of companies that pay an increasing level of cash flow over time. Now, 33,000 bucks worth of assets isn't all that impressive. I'm very much in the beginning phases of my wealth accumulation. After all, I am in my mid 20s, but if I look back just a few months ago, I was sitting around 10,000 bucks worth of assets, and over time, slowly but steadily, my wealth has been increasing. And let me tell you, this process of accumulating assets, especially in the beginning when the value isn't all that impressive, is very daunting and difficult because there's tons of temptations and distractions that can prevent you from achieving wealth. And this article of 20 money mistakes to avoid in your 20s highlights just a few of the potential distractions that are going to be roadblocks in your path of accumulating wealth. And the first one is just spending more than you make. If you don't have any money at the end of the month, you're not going to be able to acquire assets. Not tracking your money. A lot of people think mentally they know exactly where every dollar goes, but when you actually sit down and look at it, especially for the first time, you discover a lot of slippage. And over time, that slippage can be quite meaningful, so it's important to identify it and correct it. Not setting financial goals. This is another very important thing. If you don't have the objective to become wealthy, it's never going to happen. Let's pause really quick. What exactly do I mean by wealthy? Accumulating wealth, becoming wealthy. In society today, unfortunately, the term wealthy has a lot of negative connotations associated with it. But the definition of wealthy, to me, the way I see it, is wealthy people can afford their lifestyle indefinitely without having to work for it. That's why I'm working so hard to accumulate assets that generate me cash flow. So ultimately, one day, I want companies like Apple, Broadcom, Realty Income, Home Depot to pay for my lifestyle. That would make me truly wealthy. So you're essentially flipping the script. So instead of working for a company like, say, Home Depot, getting a paycheck and using that paycheck to then fund your life, you want to flip the equation. So you want to be a partial owner of the business, which is owning an asset, and that asset pays you a portion of the profits, and then you can use that to fund your lifestyle. And that's what the wealthy do. So it's super simple in concept, but in reality, it's so hard to achieve this because of all those roadblocks we were just talking about. So let me give you an example of a roadblock that I overcame about 2 years ago. And this is that roadblock, a shiny new Honda Civic. It looks good, doesn't it? Good gas mileage. You can picture yourself driving it, all the fun you're going to have in it. And you begin to picture and fantasize what it would be like to have this in your life and how amazing it would be. And here it's very important to realize one thing about human psychology, and that is the brain is amazing at making terrible decisions and justifying why it's not terrible. So when I was looking at this Honda Civic a few years ago, I looked at the starting price, it was around 22,000 bucks. I looked at the fuel economy and I compared it to what I currently had, which was a SUV from 2010. And the car was completely fine. It still ran. It just wasn't new. The gas mileage wasn't as good. And I used that to justify the purchase. So my brain was doing a lot of mental gymnastics to justify this purchase. But I'm going to show you the true cost of owning this car. And to do that, I'm going to utilize this investment calculator. So we're going to put in a starting amount of that 22,000 bucks, and this simulates putting that money to work in the market versus spending it on something you don't need. And we're just going to let it sit for 5 years. The average return of the S&P 500 has been around 14%, and that gives us an end balance of $42,000. And this right here is the true cost of buying this vehicle, not the 22,000. And this concept of trade-offs and opportunity cost holds true on every purchase, not just big ticket items. And to demonstrate that, let's do this one more time, but with smaller numbers. So here we're just starting with $100 and we're going to deposit an additional $100 every single month. And this is just simulating if you're able to save just an extra $100 per month by cutting random expenses and putting that money to work in the market instead. Just like before, it has the same return, and we're letting it run for just 5 short years. And here the end balance is $8,621. So that should be great motivation to stop wasting money at Starbucks and try to lower your monthly expenses just so you can save and invest a little bit of extra money because it does make a pretty big impact over even a short period of time. Now, that's not to say that you can never have nice things in your life. I'm going to use this illustration here to show you the proper way to afford unnecessary liabilities in your life. So think of this as a personal cash flow map. So over here we have your active income. This comes from a job. These are the core expenses like rent, insurance, food, and then liabilities are the fun, nice to have things like a car, shopping, entertainment, so on and so on. And lastly, down here in blue, we have assets. Some examples are stocks, a business, real estate. So what most people do is they work a 9 to 5 and they generate this income. And then the income goes down the following path. So it comes here and it goes to the core expenses first. And there's nothing wrong with this. You have to eat, you have to have shelter. This is completely acceptable. The issue here is that for most people, after their core expenses, everything that's left in their paycheck goes over here to liabilities and the nice to have things in life. So this is that Honda Civic, and at the end of each month, they're left with $0 left over from their paycheck. And this is what's known as the rat race. So it's a cycle. Every month they have to work, generate an income, it goes to their basic expenses, and then everything else goes to nice to have liabilities. Now let me show you what you do to build wealth instead. So you work, you get an income, this is unavoidable, at least in the beginning, and just like before, a good portion of it has to go to your expenses. The difference here is that the rest of it goes to assets instead of liabilities. And assets, of course, are the inverse of liabilities. So liabilities cost you money and assets generate you money. So they put money back into your pocket, and that looks like this on this cash flow diagram. So if you want to become wealthy, month after month when you get your paycheck, you go and you pay for your basic expenses, and the rest of your paycheck, or at least the majority of what's left, goes to buy more assets, and those assets then generate you even more income, and it becomes this closed loop of wealth generation. And as shown previously, I'm currently in the process of doing this, and I've accumulated 33,000 bucks worth of assets. But what about the liabilities? Even I still want that Honda Civic, and one day I will have it when I can actually afford it the way that the wealthy can afford their liabilities. So in order to attain these liabilities the proper way, we do not use our income to directly buy the liabilities. Instead, we use our income to buy assets, and the assets generate us more income, and it becomes this closed loop. And once we're at the point that our assets, not our income, can more than fully cover, say, a car payment, that's when you can truly afford the liability. So we're using our income to buy assets, and then we can use our assets to fund our life and buy liabilities, pay for expenses, and that's when you're truly wealthy. So that's the simple trick to becoming wealthy in life. Instead of taking your active income to waste on liabilities and expenses, you take your income and you buy cash generative assets. And then you buy the fun, nice to have liabilities only once your assets can pay for it instead of you. That's when you become wealthy. So one day I will have my Honda Civic once my portfolio can fully cover all of the car payments and all the costs associated with that liability. But that's going to do it for this video. If you're still watching and enjoyed, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, all that YouTube stuff, and I'll see you in the next one.